Welcome once again to Conversations with Veronica. I'm Veronica Andrews, your host. As we approach another political season, why not? We're approaching one. And we have a vacated seat in the House of Representatives. We have candidates who will be coming before you to tell you about them, and I'm going to get to meet them as well. And they really aspire, why I don't know, to go into the State House and represent all of us on issues that matter. So my first guest is Michelle Ciccolo.
Ciccolo.
Ciccolo. You can tell I'm not Italian, I'm sorry. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, it's a big undertaking. You've got a lot of time on your hands.
Well, I wish I could say I had a lot of free time, but I will agree it's a big undertaking.
Okay, you're very involved. You've been very involved in your hometown, Lexington. Mm-hmm. When did you start politically active, or an activist, or aware person, or were you born that way?
I'm not sure I was born that way, but I was in class council in high school at LHS. But I've been involved in government pretty much my entire professional career, working in local and regional government for a municipality and on a number of regional and statewide boards and committees.
And you don't get tired of it?
I don't get tired of it.
Sometimes it hurts to bump your head against the wall constantly.
You do feel sometimes like you're pushing the rock uphill, but it's a worthy cause. And when you know that you've made an impact on people's lives and helped to make things better, that's what fuels my energy and keeps me going.
Excellent, excellent. Do you find men rule the roost? Do you have to fight it, or do you hold your own?
I certainly hold my own. I've always been in a room where there are more men than women, because a lot of the things that I've done are capital projects and working at the department head level for a municipality. It wasn't uncommon when I first started that I might be the only woman at the table, but more and more women are getting involved and participating. So
thank God.
Thank God. Mm-hmm. It feels less unequal than it did years ago.
Good enough.
Yeah.
Do you know what you're in for? Have you spent time at the State House and see there's an undercurrent hierarchy at the State House?
There is.
And it's not political as we know it, but it's very political to the State House.
I know what I'm in for. I've spent a fair amount of time working on issues for decades, and so I've testified on important issues, and I've helped to draft and write and develop legislation and develop programs actually that have been implemented at the state level. Good. And I would say that yes, there is a strong central leadership with DeLeo in the House. But I also think that there's a lot of new members coming up, and there's the opportunity to look for ways to do things differently. Mm-hmm. I think that I'm a collaborator, and so as a selectman in Lexington, I'm in my second term as an elected official in Lexington, and I served on the planning board prior to that. Mm-hmm. So I've been a townwide elected official for 7 years, and we have an elected representative town meeting, which is our legislative body, of 200 people. So if you want to get anything passed or through in our community in Lexington, you need to be able to collaborate and develop working groups to target issues that are of importance and advance your concerns and causes. Mm-hmm. I think I'm skilled at bringing people together to solve complex problems.
Mm-hmm. Which we don't have here in Woburn. We have our own city council, and we have to sit there and listen to them and lobby them. And a town meeting is an interesting experience in itself.
Yes.
It's another whole venue of political participation.
Yes, it is, and I think it prepares me well for a job at the state legislative level.
Yeah, you're not going into it cold turkey.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what part of Woburn does the representation represent. Is it the whole part?
So Woburn has 2 different state reps, and the districts that I'm running for is the 15th Middlesex District, mm-hmm. which is Jay Kaufman is retiring from that district. So mm-hmm. if your representative is Jay Kaufman presently, that's the district we're talking about, Wards 1 and Ward 7 in Woburn. Okay. Around Horn Pond, around Four Corners. So I'm sorry I didn't bring a map that would help, but it's Wards 1 and 7.
Pretty well. And you're familiar with those areas yourself?
I'm
You walk
getting
the
to know
pond?
them better. I've been knocking on doors. I'm getting to know the area better. I'm starting to meet some business leaders in the district. But
Start walking the Horn Pond. You'll meet everybody in Woburn. It's very
it's a beautiful area.
very well utilized, and it's the people.
Right.
It's everybody. It's a very cross-reference, casual. Lots of dogs, lots of children.
Right.
And it's much enjoyed and much used area and it's much appreciated
Yeah,
as well.
it's a great resource for the community.
And of course, you stop at Dunkin' Donuts.
Absolutely.
I know people from Lexington who come to our Dunkin' Donuts because they find it more friendly.
Yeah, that's pretty good to hear.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What would be your major objective? What's really important to you?
Well, I have a number of issues that are my priorities. There's 5 or 6 of them, but I would say, sort of to frame my concerns broadly, I think we need to advance equity in our state. Right now, we have a very disparate system where there are too many people that are not able to access the middle class and do well. Income disparity is pretty stark in Massachusetts, and we need to work on finding policies that help advance people's concerns. But I would say that for my priority issues, education and transportation, the economy, the environment, and healthcare, health and wellness in particular, on the preventative side. I could go into detail about all those issues and spend a little bit of time on each one, but I think we need to prepare for some very significant changes that we're going to see in our transportation system and in our economy. Which I'm not sure that we're doing a great job preparing for right now.
And what do you think the legislature can do about that private individuals and businesses aren't already trying, or are they a detriment?
Well, if you're talking specifically about transportation, right now we're underinvesting in our transportation systems, both the physical infrastructure, but especially in transit. And as we see the change that's going to occur as more people are doing rideshare and using technology, the GPS systems are routing people through our streets and causing congestion and cut through traffic, which is a very serious problem. And if we are not preparing for better policies that address some of those concerns, we're going to have the situation become exacerbated and even worse. So part of what we need to do is make sure we're more aggressively investing in transit. And in the suburbs, that means shuttle bus systems and also better walking and biking opportunities so that people can get to the transportation systems we already have, like at Anderson Transportation Center.
And Anderson needs some work itself.
Yes, it does.
Yes? And so many of us pay taxes for the infrastructure specifically. And we don't really believe that it goes there.
That's right. That's right.
And that's, I mean, we're the ones that use the roads, the transportation, the sidewalks. You know, where does it go? If it doesn't go to better it for everybody, why are we paying it?
That's right. That's right. And you know, right now there's a number of initiatives to give more control to cities and towns. There's something called the Regional Ballot Initiative, which is a piece of standalone legislation that I support that allows cities and towns to pass a ballot question to improve an infrastructure project in their community and some contiguous communities if they want, and raise revenue specifically for that purpose in a very targeted way, so you know it's going to the things that you want it to be going to.
So you would raise it within the community? It's not part of what we're already paying?
It would be a different tax that the community could decide how it wanted to raise, whether it would be a sales tax.
We decided this is how we wanted that one to pay for, and that often happens. You know, what would you do if you voted and worked for and something got passed that you believed in, and then you saw it sidelined?
Well, I think that does happen from time to time, and one of the ways that you combat that is through the budget process. And the budget, after the governor introduces the budget, it goes to the House next. And I think a lot of people don't pay as much attention to the importance of the policy implications of the budgets that we set. And so I would plan as a legislator to roll up my sleeves and get involved in really understanding the particulars of the budget and how that impacts cities and towns. Now, as a person who's served on a lot of boards and committees, I was on the Mass Municipal Association board for 3 years and the Local Government Advisory Commission. And one of the things that we did there is advocate very assertively for something called Chapter 90, along with, and Chapter 70. Chapter 90 is the road reimbursement funding that cities and towns get from the state.
Which goes down every year, I'm hearing.
It's been consistent, but not nearly meeting the needs of cities and towns. And so we have data to show that we need about a $600 million annual appropriation, and we're lucky if we get 3 on a typical year. But those are the kinds of programs that I would advocate for, because I understand exactly what they do in our cities and towns to make sure that we have the resources we need to improve our local roads. And that comes directly back to the communities, as opposed to going to somewhere you're not clear where the money's being spent.
One of the things we find as residents here in Woburn, we have an awful lot of roads that are state roads.
Yep.
And they're pieces.
Yep.
You know, this belongs to Woburn. Oops, that's the state. This belongs to Woburn. So when there's a pothole in there that's big enough to take a cement mixer, you have to call and call and call. You have to find the state department that's responsible. You have to do anything and everything. And in the end, you feel like going out there and filling it out yourself.
Yep, I hear you. So let me tell you a little bit about my experience in state transportation projects, because when I was the assistant town administrator and the community development director for the town of Hudson for 20 years, I built a tremendous number of state projects, because I was the person that helped to spearhead some of our road widening projects, some of our bridge projects. I helped to build the first phase of the Assabet River Rail Trail, and those were all state and federal funded projects. So I got very familiar with the entire system that we use in Massachusetts. There's a metropolitan planning organizations that program our federal funds. And I worked with the state agencies and the regional agencies that do the decision making about how to allocate priority projects. So if I am your legislator, I will know who to contact, who to go to, and how to advance projects that can bring money back to the district, for transportation in particular.
That's important, thank you. But more than anything, I find we need a contact. I mean, to call you, to call my state rep's office, they're always responsive, and I have no complaints whatsoever.
Good.
But I really think that there should be a direct line for us to address the questions. If it's an electrical question, if it's a sidewalk. I'm a handicap commissioner here in Woburn. And to get a handicap ramp, sidewalk ramp, fixed, newly installed, a year is nothing to wait.
Right.
And that's not cool.
It's not cool.
No.
So one of the programs I helped to develop is the statewide Complete Streets program. And when I was the president of the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, I brought forward the idea of creating an incentive program for cities and towns to have the funding they would need to be able to advance bike and pedestrian improvements. Complete Streets is a concept that our streets should be accessible and safe for users of all ages and abilities. And so we essentially developed legislation with my encouragement and my direction on how to sort of develop a program where cities and towns would have to pass a policy that they wanted to move the community in the direction of being a complete streets community. And then they could apply for grants and get state funding to help make some of these types of capital infrastructure improvements. So that program did get passed in the transportation bond bill, and then once it got passed, I helped to sit on the working group that developed the regulations and guidance for cities and towns for the program itself. MassDOT is putting an increasing emphasis on accessibility. They have a statewide accessibility plan that they've been developing. So it's different if it's not a local road, if you have to go to MassDOT. But again, there are specific programs now that help to link communities up to be able to access funds to get those handicap ramps done. It is something we need to prioritize.
We do, but not at the expense of the able-bodied population who pays the bill. A lot of times there's some angst in there. When you pull up to a building and you've got a sprained ankle, in every single handicap parking place is handicap accessible. And you wind up parking, you know, a half a mile away and having, that's not fair to the able-bodied population who slip on ice and fall down the stairs and need, you know, the same I guess it's equal access. So every other and unfortunately when ADA came in, they figured that every parking place had to be against the building, and that's not so.
Right.
But to get those changed as well. Change doesn't come easy.
It does not.
No.
You have to have a lot of perseverance.
What do you hope to accomplish? What do you think your best bet is, besides winning the election?
Well, I would say that legislation is complicated, and it doesn't come easily, as you say. And so my goal would be to be an advocate for good policy and to keep at it, to make lots of changes. There may not be one big thing that is visible within the first couple of years, but I think it's really important to move all legislation gently in the direction of more equity for everyone, better funding, and I think it's critical as a legislator to listen to your constituents and be the voice of your constituents on Beacon Hill. In other words, one of the primary roles that I would play is to be your representative, bringing your voices and your concerns to the state so that the legislation that does get crafted is something that respects the needs and wishes of Woburn and Lexington.
So when you come up against a decision that you feel very strongly about here, and your constituents feel as strongly, what do you represent? What do you champion?
You represent the constituents.
Oh, could we have that in writing?
I think you have to. I think you need to
but
be
some people, once they get past that front door, forget that.
Yeah, I think that's unfortunate. I think it's critically important. And in the House, there are more members in the House than in the Senate. And so we should be the body that is closer to the people because our districts are smaller. And it's one of the things that particularly appeals to me about running for state rep, because I'm the kind of person, as an elected official currently, my door is always open, my cell phone is always available and on, and anybody who wants to reach me or have a meeting with me, I welcome. So I don't turn anyone away, and I find I value each of the interactions I have with constituents, and hearing their concerns makes me a better leader because I understand where people are coming from. So I'm very available. I would plan to continue to be available. And if you look at my career and my record of having served on so many regional boards and some state boards, I'm present to many communities. I go to the meetings in the district, I listen, and I show up and participate. And that's the type of leader I plan to be if I'm elected.
I'm very fond of Mr. Kaufman's meetings.
Yes.
Are you going to try and continue something like that?
Absolutely. Well, that's something that everyone loves, and I certainly will do that.
I hate to see him go. Not
Me
that
too.
you wouldn't be a good replacement, but I suppose he earned it. He's been there for all of us for all these years. And
23.
He's not that well known in Woburn, and yet whenever there's an important occasion that I'm involved in, he's right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that matters so good. I'm glad to know that they're going to continue. You're going to continue that particular venue because it's well done, and it's not necessarily political. It's instructional.
Right.
You learn something every time you go, and you might not need that information immediately, nor is that what you went there for. But 6 months down the road, where you wait a minute, I can, I know this is true, and that's very valuable.
That absolutely is quite valuable.
What's your family thinking of you going for state?
Well, I have 2 teenage boys. One of them is in college, a sophomore, and the other one is a junior in high school, his all-important junior year. They are excited for me. I think my youngest son in particular is really excited that I'm doing this. My husband is supportive. As a working woman who's worked since the children were born, after 10 weeks after each child, I went back to the office. So my husband, I could not have had the career that I've had without a very supportive and loyal husband who really encourages me. He knows that I can contribute in a meaningful way that really makes change and helps improve people's lives, and I think he values that. So
wise man.
He's a wise man. I wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for his support.
True. Behind every woman who's brave enough to go out there, there's always an awfully good man who doesn't necessarily want to be in the limelight, but who believes in what you're doing, believes in your ability, and is willing to make the sacrifices so that it can happen. Is he a good cook?
Well, he will occasionally cook, but I'm the family cook.
You get it all ready before you go out the door, right?
Yeah, we all kind of share the duties, and he does the laundry, which is something I hate to do. So I thrilled about that.
He gets a gold star for that.
He gets a gold star for that, absolutely.
Alone for that, right. And now going in and out of Boston in traffic every day is going to be a little different than showing up in Lexington Center.
True enough. But my office currently is in Alston. I'm actually a consultant at the moment and a small business owner.
Okay.
So I'm used to going into the city. And as I mentioned, I've been on many regional boards and committees. I go into the city several times a week and have for decades.
Oh God, I go in twice a year and I'm frightened right out of my gourd.
No, I'm comfortable with that. You know, when I can, I take the red line, and when I can't,
you get your own parking place if you win the seat.
I guess I haven't inquired about that yet.
Well,
that'll be nice. That'll be a perk.
Because those are the things that I do youth in government, which is through the YMCA, and it's a wonderful program. And I've learned an awful lot about the inner workings of the State House. And as I remember, and it could have changed, newbies get the office in the basement.
Yeah.
You're going to get Mr. Kaufman's office? I don't know.
No, because he's got seniority, so
Right.
I'm sure I'll get a basement office somewhere,
Right.
but that's fine.
And whether you get a telephone or not, and mailing privileges, I mean, you have to work up to it, and
Right.
you want to be productive,
Right.
and you need all of these things, but you work hard at being public, but in the background you have to work
Yes.
twice as hard to establish yourself, and I don't suppose that's a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing, but I would also say that as a person who's been involved in government for as long as I have really good relationships with a number of reps and senators already, and I think that my learning curve will be a little bit shorter than the average newbie because I know these folks as colleagues. You know, I've worked on legislation before, and I've worked on complex programs that impact the state, so I'm hoping that that'll help get me going a little bit faster.
Identity, one thing, and the ability to be recognized, and I would suspect they know you're not going to go away.
Right, right. If you look at my career record, I spent 20 years working for the town of Hudson. After graduate school in public affairs, I thought I'd stay there 2 years and move on and out to something, you know, more glamorous, I suppose. But I stayed because I was able to be effective in making change and having a really positive impact on that community. And so I stayed the decades that I did because I was contributing. And I would say that if I'm elected to the State House, to the state rep position, I understand things take time, and I have the dedication and commitment to stick with it. And I've proven that.
Well, that's training right there for the that flies through the air at times, because an administrator is not an easy position to have, to be an individual, to do your job, and then to put up with the politicians.
Right. Right.
So that's very good training there.
Yeah.
Good luck, kid.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm pretty excited about this opportunity.
Yeah, well, how long? It's going to be a long till we vote. When do we vote? In September?
So the primary is the day after Labor Day, which I'm concerned with. I was just reading about how Woburn's kids go back to school after Labor Day. I know you're talking about moving it.
They're talking. I'm not. I don't arrive back. I come back the night of Labor Day, and their clothes are already on their bed, and when they find themselves sitting in school the next day, they still have sand between their toes.
Oh, that's fabulous. I'm glad they have sand between their toes. But I worry about making sure that people know the election is happening, because you know most people will have been on break, whether it's break from school or whether they're taking a little bit of a vacation in August, and so getting the word out about the day after Labor Day primary is really important.
Do you know if they're going to do early voting like they did the last summer?
I hope they will. I haven't seen that determination yet. It takes a vote of the legislature to approve that, so I'm watching that carefully. I think that would be helpful because certainly people do like to travel that time of year, and if you don't have kids to come home to school.
But financially, it was a burden on the city.
Yes.
The cost
Yes.
was much more.
Yep.
It showed you how many people would take advantage of it. But that literally almost brought to a halt what was going on in the city clerk's office, but it couldn't.
Right.
So they had to function Well, all of their staff was handling the voting
Right.
early, so it was, I don't know if they worked the kinks out of that.
They did just approve the reimbursements to cities and towns.
Well,
It was
listen.
an unfunded mandate that was pursued, and again, as someone who's been part of the Mass Municipal Association, I watch those unfunded mandates very carefully, and I think it's important for any legislator to have a sensitivity to understand the impact of the laws and regulations that they're making at the state level and how that will impact in the real world.
It seemed to us
Cities and
we had
towns.
an election every month last
I
year.
know. So it's an important thing
In
to.
that war, there was the apathetic already, but that gave you another 50% that, who am I voting for today? Why am I going?
Right.
You know, who isn't showing up for work? You know, it really wore people down. Instead of engaging them in the process, it was something they really
Right.
didn't want to hear about.
Right. I am hoping that there'll be more youth engaged in the process. What we're seeing very recently with the activism coming from the
yes.
students is very exciting. So I do hope that our students are watching this election and hoping to participate and getting in and continuing to be engaged, because
Years
that's
ago,
a very
we did a voter registration here at the high school, and there was one particular individual in the building who could register the kids. I don't know if that's the same. That was before you could register when you get your license.
Right.
And before you could register online.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think you'll find an infusion of these young people because they don't teach civics in school anymore. So
They're-
this is the first time they really are getting infused with,
Right.
I can really make a difference.
Right. There's a recent bill that passed, I think, the Senate for civics education. And I'm very excited to see that moving through. It's essential to the health of our democracy that
I think
we
so.
teach kids when they're young and get them engaged and involved.
The young people that went through youth in government when I was with it was about 6 years. I'm proud to say they are involved now
Yeah.
with their families, and you know they are participating and they are using what they learned during that process.
Right.
And the skullduggery and the underlying political even walked into that program, which I thought was wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they weren't going into it blindly and thinking you just go by the rules. You got to look for the guy that's about coming up in behind you.
That's right.
We
We do
did-
mock town meeting in Lexington, and we do this with the middle schoolers.
Oh, good.
And it is incredibly exciting to see these students stand up and make an argument for an article or against an article and participate in the process. And you can see how fired up and excited they get to sort of test their voice and use their voice to argue for something that they feel strongly
We
about.
do Student Government Day here in Woburn, but it's more participatory and
Well, that's
photo
great.
ops.
Oh,
They don't really get, although some have wanted to be the policeman for the day, but it doesn't happen. We have about a minute left. What
Okay.
would you like to tell our voting constituents?
well, I would say that I encourage your voters to take a look at my website, michelleciccolo.com. I would say that I am the candidate with the broadest background and the most experience and a proven track record of delivering outcomes that are effective to help improve people's lives. I'm very passionate and I work extremely hard, and I believe that I am the best fit to advance the needs of the Middlesex 15th District.
Good luck, kid.
Thank you for having me.
Nice to have met you. There you go. That's our first candidate. Remember, keep a scorecard. We'll be back. Bye now. Conversations with Veronica.